It's the last real lecture of the unit. Yay, you made it through. This is our last long unit for Unit 4. The rest of them kind of fly by pretty quickly. At this point, we have less than a month of school left since we are done May 12th. And we have, we have 4 more units to get through, I think. Thinking and language, motivation and emotion, and intelligence. So we are going to cruise through these. All right. So for this last lecture, adolescence and adulthood, a lot of it is stuff that I feel like I don't need to go over a ton because you've had it, whether it be in like your everyday living or healthy living classes or anatomy or just, general knowledge over a lot of stuff that you've been exposed to. But I'm going to present it anyway because it's part of the curriculum. But I feel like you probably won't need to spend a ton of time on a lot of this stuff. But still, watch a video. That is not permission to say, oh, okay, she's just going to repeat stuff I've heard. No, some of it is different. All right, so for this, I'm gonna rephrase this too and say this is not my PowerPoint. I borrowed it from apsychology.com. So if any of the little weird pictures that he has on here freak you out or you're like, what is Bozak doing? Disclaimer, not me. So we have to talk about puberty. So when we talk about adolescence, we have to talk about the changes that everyone is going through, right? So we've already been going over like the childhood progression of like cognitive development, physical development. So this is the physical and cognitive stuff of puberty, of adolescence, all this stuff. It goes along, right? So everyone knows what puberty is. It's the awkward stage in your life where you magically have the body of an adult, or you're starting to have a body of an adult, or at least the ability to reproduce like an adult, and your body changes and it's super weird and awkward. So a period of sexual maturation is what the definition is, where you are capable of reproducing, which makes you an adult on some level. Even though we're not cognitively there, physically our bodies are adultish. So, not my PowerPoint. Primary sexual characteristics. Trying to lighten the mood here because some people feel real uncomfortable talking about it. A primary sexual characteristic is anything that makes you able to reproduce. Okay, so body structures like penis, testicles, vagina, and ovaries, these are all things that are primary sexual characteristics because you need these to reproduce. These are necessary parts, otherwise probably not going to happen. And so during puberty, right, like these things mature. Secondary sexual characteristics are non-reproductive sexual characteristics, and these change very vastly during puberty. So you have, like for females, the widening of the hips. Boys, men start getting the deepening of the voices, and that's when you have like the awkward cracking of the voice. Breast development in women, and then everyone has hair show up all over their body. So not necessary to reproduce. These things don't necessarily have to happen, but they do around the time when we're going through puberty. All of these things start changing in us. Now, the landmarks of puberty, how you kind of know like puberty is upon us, it has happened. So for girls, you have their first period, and then for boys, you have their first ejaculation. And so all of these things are, or both of these things are just a sign that puberty is starting, and this person is now a physically sexually mature adult on some level, just meaning they're capable of starting to reproduce. Now, I think these ones are much more psychologically driven, which makes me love them even that much more. Yeah, the physical stuff, it's interesting, it's necessary, we need to know it, but this is more like the cognitive stuff that's going on with adolescence, which is super unique just to your generation, or not your generation, your age range. So a personal fable is an individual's belief that he or she is invincible and can't be harmed, also believing that your ideas and opinions are completely unique. So teenagers having the idea that, oh, I know that if I did this, it could hurt. I know people get hurt by doing this stuff, but not me. So it's the idea like maybe a kid tries something risky, a risky behavior of some sorts, and they're like, well, I know it happens to people, but it won't happen to me. Like, there's no justification for why they think it won't happen to them. They just they're aware, they're not dumb, they know it could happen, but it won't to them. And that's how every teenager feels about everything until it happens to them. Also, this inability to realize that other people have probably experienced a lot of the stuff you've experienced before. So you go through your first breakup or something horrible happens to you when you're a teen, and your parents are trying to be like, it's okay, it'll get better, everything will be fine. I went through this when I was your age, and the teenager's response is, you don't know how it feels to be me, you don't understand this, you've never experienced anything like this. So, like, that is a super teenager thing that you probably either remember saying or you've heard other people say, or like a sibling that's like, that tween age. This is stuff that is completely normal. I said it when I was a teenager to my parents, or at least I thought it. And the thing is, like, yeah, when my kid's a teenager, he's going to say that stuff to me. I'm going to be like, wait, I totally had those feelings. I totally remember feeling this way. But it doesn't matter. Teenagers, your parents are like, I remember that too. Like, no, you don't know. You're not me. Like, it's this idea that, yeah, you're a unique individual, but here's the deal. Your experiences to some level are not 100% unique. There's probably someone else. And especially when they're just like the frustration, the lack of being completely independent feelings, or just like heartbreak, all of those are things that people experience all the time. But teenagers feel like it's completely unique for them and no one gets them. We also have teenagers experiencing an imaginary audience where they believe that everyone's kind of looking at them or paying attention to them. And that's like they're on a stage 24/7. So maybe you ask somebody, hey, do you want to go to the grocery store with me? And that person takes forever to get ready. My sister, I remember, I'm sure I was like this too, because I remember waking up when I was probably in, I want to say like 9th grade. And I remember getting up at like 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. to curl my long hair and make it look perfect and getting dressed awesome so I could go to school and look cool or look like however I wanted, right? Thinking that everyone at school would notice me if I didn't do that stuff. They would notice that something was out of place. They would notice that I didn't do my hair or makeup that day or whatever. And so like my sister too, it would be like when I got my driver's license at 16, I was like, hey, do you want to go to the grocery store? Because I can drive. And it was like, oh, sure. And she was 14. And then it would be like an hour later, like, we're just going to the grocery store. What are you doing? And she'd say, oh, I have to get ready. Like, for what? Well, I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know. And like people will look if I don't look a certain way. So it's not that you're worried about running into somebody. It's like a complete stranger walks by and they maybe like let out a laugh or kind of like look at you for a sec. And you're like, oh my God, they noticed this. Oh my God, they were paying attention to me. Yes, you're a very important person. Yes, they care about you. But guess what? The world is not really paying attention to you. People are worried about their own stuff. But it's this weird, awkward station in life where we just feel like everyone's paying attention to us and they notice everything. Somebody giggles and you're like, I bet they're laughing about me. I knew I did something dumb. And you're like, no one was laughing at you. You're like, no, I'm pretty convinced that they were. So it's this unique thing that teenagers have that maybe if you think hard enough, you've gone through. Maybe you still have it, and that's possible. All right, so adulthood. We're going to take this leap here. We have early adulthood, middle adulthood, late adulthood. And so during this time, we have more physical changes happen. Here's the sad news. Not for you. You're still climbing that hill. But we about physically peak in our mid-20s, meaning like maybe you're not at your healthiest in your mid-20s, but like that's the time where if you were a healthy person, like mid-20s, good. It's downhill after the mid-20s for your physical abilities. Doesn't mean you couldn't like lose weight if you were bigger or something, or gain more muscle than you've ever had after mid-20s. It just means like, yeah, you could do that. But if you had done that earlier when you were in your mid-20s, things would have been easier and better. Now, physical milestones in adulthood, there's not many. As for like, puberty is the big one in adolescence. For physical milestones for adulthood, women have it, menopause. So the idea that now, like, this is the ceasing of a woman's ability to reproduce. And so a lot of these symptoms are due to lack of estrogen. And it's not just that they do lose the ability to reproduce, right? Like they don't ovulate anymore. They don't have periods. But it also comes with like a lot of other side effects too. So sometimes I'll have kids in class talk about like, oh my God, my mom's going through this. Our house is so cold all the time. So like heat flashes go through it, right? Hot flashes all the time because of this hormone imbalance that's taking place to stop them from being able to reproduce. You also have the psychological effects. So some women can be really, really upset by this because maybe they weren't wanting another kid or a kid in general. But now it's not really their decision anymore of like, well, I could have a kid if I wanted to, or I could add another one to my family. But now it's your body saying like, oh no, I physically can't do this anymore. And so it's just like that opportunity and that freedom to choose is gone. And so some women have a really hard time with it as well. And plus, their hormones are all over the place. So typically there's mood swings along with the hot flashes. So it's kind of a messy time. Men don't have anything like that. They produce sperm pretty much forever. So men don't go through a period where they can see. If they're still kicking at 90, yeah, they could procreate at 90 years old with somebody. Now, life expectancy keeps increasing. It's around 75 years old. So the question is, when is it going to like level off, or is it going to keep going with like modern medicine and abilities, or are we going to do something where it starts lowering? We don't know. But for right now, it's around 75. Women live about 4 years longer than men. The weird thing is, before birth, you actually have more male babies or male fetuses conceived. You have about 126 males like produced during the embryonic stage, or the germinal stage or whatever, and only about 100 women. And then at birth, it drops to 105 men for every 100 women. So it's one of those things like, in other words, men die easier. Male embryos just seem to not be as hardy as the female ones. Now here is this super positive looking chart where everything seems to fall off drastically around the age of 60 or 70. So the first chart looks at vision, and when we hit 70, it plummets. Once again, we talked about our lens just isn't as flexible, and around 70, it seems that eyesight it's a struggle. The other one is smells. So around 70, we see a plummet down of our ability to smell. And if you remember, smell deals with taste as well. So if you've been around older people when they're eating, like people who are aging or, around 70 or older, they put a lot of salt and pepper and spices on their food. We were like, wow, that's a ton. It's because they can't taste. If their smell's gone away, their taste is also starting to like go downhill. So maybe they make things extra spicy or extra like salty or sweet. They're just trying to taste it, so they have to like put the extra stuff on. As far as identity or being able to identify spoken words, so this is hearing. After the age of 30, it actually starts going down, and then it plummets around, I would say, like 50. After 50, we see a steep decline. So with health, bad news is as we get older, our immune system weakens, so it makes us more susceptible to cancer. But since we've aged and been exposed to so much stuff, we have a lot more antibodies, so we're more resistant to things like colds. Aging and driving is always a fun topic. So we talk about how like the danger or fatality rate of drivers really high when we're 16 years old because we're new and we're dumb and we don't know what we're doing. But then after the age of 70, it plummets. It like goes back up where a lot more fatal. And one thing we notice is the further people are driving in a day or from home or whatever, the more miles we're putting in behind a car, the more likely we are to get in a fatal wreck, especially as we get older. So, reaction speeds are slower, their eyesight's going down, their hearing is off, like all of those things do play a part. And then we have Alzheimer's, this irreversible brain disorder, type of like dementia, and it definitely leads to some really vast issues with memory along with physical incapacitation. So it deteriorates memory, but it also can deteriorate language abilities or even physical functioning, and it runs its course in about 5 to 20 years before the person will die from it. And so the neurotransmitter we link it to is acetylcholine, which maybe hopefully you remember, because acetylcholine does memory, movement, learning. And so if acetylcholine is linked to memory, it would make sense that we see less of it in these people. There's all these things being tried. We can't say estrogen is the cure, but it's something that we see has improved it. We also know there's cognitive changes. When we look back on life, we tend to remember events from our teens and 20s very, very well. Even when we're, 40, 50 years old, we remember those very solidly. And it might just be because those were very formative years, right? Your teens and 20s, you're figuring out who you are. It's that role versus identity confusion. And yeah, maybe it just sticks with us because it's such an important part of us. We're discovering our careers, the people we want to be with, the people we want to be. As we age, recognition remains stable and recall gets a little slower. So with this stuff, crystallized versus fluid intelligence. You know what? I'm going to pause because my time is about to run out. And so I'll have to do the last few slides on part 2. Sorry about that.